The Silver Sword, Chapter 2, Journey Through the Air. The village of Zakina was a mile below the camp. It was a mass of tiny huts clinging to the steep cliffside. There was no moon that night, but Joseph could see lights in the windows. He walked straight through the village. Suddenly, he was challenged in German. "Kyle, give me the cigarettes," said a rough voice. He took no notice and walked on. "Kyle, the cigarettes," the voice shouted threateningly. He hurried on. There were footsteps behind him. He turned round to look. A drunken soldier was tottering after him. Joseph began to run. The soldier ran too, swearing whenever he stumbled. Just below the last huts in the village, the road curled away from the cliff edge. A mail car had pulled up. Her lights were on and the engine running. There was a pile of luggage in the road, and an angry group of people had gathered round. "You are 2 hours late," someone cried. "I told you, there was an avalanche. The road was blocked," returned the driver. Joseph dived behind the white wall of snow that the snowplow had thrown up at the side of the road. He was right on the edge of the cliff, which dropped steeply into the darkness. He heard the sound of crates being dumped in the road, and he heard the drunken soldier roll up and cry, "Driver, you've pinched my cigarettes!" "Chuck him over the cliff," said someone. A scuffle, laughter, steps coming towards him. Joseph slid quietly away to where a square shape jutted out from the road. In the dark, it looked like a cart without wheels. Quickly, he hid underneath. At once, he wished he hadn't moved. A heavy crate banged down onto the boards above his head. The boards quivered and shook. Boots scraped the wood, shuffled on the stone. There was a babble of voices, jolts and leg pulling mixed with directions for the loading of the crates. Joseph waited tensely while the crates were lifted in and the tarpaulin draped over them. When the soldiers were back in the road, he heaved himself over the wooden edge and under the tarpaulin. A loud voice shouted, "Are you ready there?" From the other side of the dark valley came an answering call. Suddenly, Joseph realized that the wooden boards he lay on were moving. They were sliding out into the darkness, away from the road. Where was he? As soon as he dared, he lifted the edge of the tarpaulin and looked out. He was in a kind of roofless cage. It was hung by pulleys and wired to an overhead cable and was swinging giddily from side to side. An aerial luggage lift. These were quite common in the mountains. They were driven by electricity and used for carrying goods from one side of a steep valley to the other. Joseph sighed with relief. The giddy movement of the cage made him feel sick, but he knew that every second was taking him further from his enemies. Then suddenly the cage squeaked to a standstill. It began to slide back to the road. The voices on the road grew louder, a jerk, a rattle of pulleys, the scrape of wood on snow, and he was back where he had started. Someone leapt into the cage and lifted the tarpaulin on the other side of the crates from Joseph. "There's room for it alongside. Hurry up!" cried the same voice. Joseph's hand was in his revolver holster. He meant to fight his way out if he had to, but all he could feel in the holster was a stick of chocolate. Another crate was chucked in and kicked alongside the other pair. It banged against his foot and nearly made him scream with pain. He fell back and bit his lip, groaning. But no one heard his groans, for the cage was already rattling out into the darkness again. While he rubbed his bruised toes, it pinched and swung from side to side. After a few minutes of climbing, a shape loomed down towards him and rattled past. It was the balance lift. The descending cage which balanced the weight of the climbing one, and it meant he had passed the halfway mark. Ahead of him was the black shape of the mountain. With every swing of the cage and every creak of the cable, it came nearer. Were there soldiers on that side too? If so, what was he to do? He could not escape discovery, and he was quite unarmed. In a flash, he made up his mind. He lifted the tarpaulin from his shoulders and sat with his back to the crates, facing the dark mountain.